We are here in Tampa, Florida. We are honored to be joined by Senator Mike Lee, great state of Utah. Good to see you, sir.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Let's talk first of all about the state of Utah, great concentration of Mormons. There seems to be, when NBC does a special about Mormonism, and they don't do a special about anyone else's religion, do you see an anti-Mormon bias in the media when it comes to the Romney candidacy?
You know, I do see some leftist bias, and sometimes that ends up manifesting itself in the form of an anti-Mormon statement of one sort or another. It's frustrating, but it's consistent with what else we've seen. The good thing, though, is that with emerging alternatives to the mainstream media, the mainstream media is no longer able to exercise a complete monopolistic control over the information people receive.
You talk about the mainstream media. Before all the talk of Hurricane Isaac was here, the networks were not covering the first night of the speech, which would have included Ann Romney's speech. Do you think that the alternative media and the social media is enough of a substitute, or the networks are still so important in getting these messages out?
Well, the networks are important, to be sure. I don't mean to suggest that because social media and other alternative channels of communication have appeared on the scene that the mainstream media isn't important. It's just that there is an alternative now, and there's a supplement, and that does a couple of things. First of all, if the mainstream media won't cover something that people want to watch, they're going to lose money, and they know that now. And the other thing is, if they don't cover it, at least people will have some alternative. They'll still be able to get the information. So that's helpful.
Tell me about the history, tradition, and the protection of the Second Amendment in the state of Utah.
Well, Utahns are strong believers in the Second Amendment and in the fact that it's there to protect the people. It's there to make sure that people have the right to protect themselves from those who would harm them. And if, heaven forbid, the need should arise, even from against their government, if their government should turn into a tyrant.
Senator, Harry Reid is the leader of the Senate, of course, right now. You know, I'm sure that you'd like to change that in November. How hard is it? You know, we see things getting through the House, but it seems to be the Senate is in such gridlock when it comes to, of course, things like budget and a budget that nobody in the president's party will even vote on. How bad is it in the Senate right now?
Well, I think you just put your finger on the most relevant point, which is we haven't passed a budget in well over 3 years. Last time the Senate passed a budget, there was no such thing as the iPad. I mean, it's been that long.
Wow.
And, it's very frustrating because we've had a number of Republicans who have presented budgets. I'm one of 3 or 4 Republicans in the Senate who have presented a budget. You don't have any Democrats who have proposed their own budget other than President Obama, and his budget got 0 votes this year and 0 votes last year. You don't
including everyone in his party too, which is amazing. It's shocking almost.
That's right. To my knowledge, not a single Democrat in the Senate has voted for or offered a single budget in this Congress. It's disgraceful. Now, I understand we have a need to compromise, and Democrats are often on the front row of those saying compromise, we need civility, we need discussion. You cannot have compromise and a civil discussion unless they first give an initial offer of what they might be willing to accept.
Right. You can't compromise with an empty piece of paper.
That's right. You can't compromise with an empty piece of paper or an empty chair, and that's what we've got there.
Last question. Speaking of empty pieces of paper, when you look at Fast and Furious and you see the documents by the Department of Justice that were literally blacked out, fully redacted pieces of paper, you look at how crazy the story gets from the tragedy that started with the death of Border Patrol Brian Terry to now all these interconnections between the ATF and JP Morgan. It just gets really bad. How are you following Fast and Furious, and what are you doing to get to the bottom of it?
Absolutely. I've questioned Attorney General Holder in Judiciary Committee hearings on this issue. We still have not gotten all of our questions answered. Neither has Chairman Issa and his colleagues in the House of Representatives. But, we're going to continue to follow up on this issue as long as this president is in office. And even after that, we're not going to let this die. It's a shame. It's a tragedy what happened. It also represents a significant amount of government mismanagement, leading to absolutely tragic consequences. So I'm disturbed by this. I'm perplexed by the invocation at the late stage of the game of the executive privilege, and we're not going to let this one go.
Senator Lee, thanks for your time, sir.
Thank you.